The message came on a quiet Tuesday morning. Admiral James stood in Earth's Global Defense Command Center, his coffee growing cold in his hands as he stared at the main screen. The alien symbols floating there made his stomach turn. After 30 years of military service, he had thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. "Can you translate it?" he asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Dr. Thomas, the head of communications, nodded. His fingers danced across the holographic keyboard. "The AI is processing it now, sir. Their language structure is remarkably similar to some of ours." The symbols shifted, transformed, and became English text. Asterisk a tention. Primitive world designation Sol 3. Asterisk. Asterisk your soistm is been marquee div for integration into the galactic empire asterisk. Asterisk PREPRE for ARIVL of Imperial REPREC entity. He is asterisk. Asterisk. Resistance is historic KALOEFUTILE asterisk. "How many ships?" Admiral James asked, setting down his coffee. "Long-range scanners show 3 vessels, sir," Lieutenant Mary reported from her station. "They're massive. Each one is roughly the size of Manhattan." The Admiral's weathered face remained calm, but his mind raced through scenarios. Earth had united its military forces just 5 years ago, forming the United Defense Force. They had barely settled their own differences, and now this. "Get me the Global Council," he ordered. "Priority Alpha." Within minutes, the circular chamber screens lit up with faces of world leaders. Some had clearly been woken up, others interrupted from meetings. All wore the same expression of contained fear. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral James began, 20 minutes ago, we received first contact from what calls itself the Galactic Empire. They're not here for friendship." The chamber erupted in multiple languages before the translation systems could catch up. The Indian Prime Minister spoke first. "What are their demands?" "Integration into their empire," James replied. "Their ships will arrive in our orbit in approximately 6 hours." "What are our options?" asked the African Union President, her voice sharp and clear. Dr. Thomas stepped forward. "Their technology is beyond anything we've seen. Their ships use some form of gravity manipulation we can barely detect, let alone understand. But," he paused, adjusting his glasses, "they made a mistake in their transmission. Every screen focused on him. They sent it in a format our systems could process. That means they're not as alien as they want us to think. They've been watching us, learning our technologies, and if we can understand their basic systems, we can fight them," the Russian president finished. Admiral James nodded. "We've spent centuries fighting each other. We know war in ways they might not expect." "Dr. Thomas, what resources do you need?" "Every programmer, physicist, and engineer we can get." And he glanced at the world leaders, complete sharing of all military technology between nations. The silence that followed was heavy. Centuries of secrets, advantages, and power plays hung in the balance. The Chinese president spoke first. "Full access to our quantum computing research. Our anti-satellite systems," added the American president. One by one, leaders offered their nation's closely guarded secrets. Admiral James watched in amazement as barriers that had stood for generations crumbled in minutes. 6 hours, he reminded them. "We need to show them humanity stands united." The Global Council chamber transformed into a war room. Orders flew across continents. Military bases worldwide went to highest alert. Emergency broadcasts began worldwide, carefully worded to prevent panic, but clear enough to convey the gravity of the situation. As the alien ships approached, humanity showed its first strength. Adaptation. Streets cleared with remarkable order. Underground shelters, built during the Cold War and maintained out of habit, filled with civilians. Military units moved with precision born from countless drills. 5 hours and 58 minutes after the first message, Admiral James stood ready. Global defenses were as prepared as they could be. Dr. Thomas and his international team worked furiously nearby, analyzing every bit of data from the approaching ships. "Sir," Lieutenant Mary called out, "they're entering orbit." The massive ships cast shadows over major cities as they positioned themselves around the globe. Their dark hulls seemed to absorb sunlight, making them look like holes in the sky. A new message appeared. Asterisk for APR, for Imperial Repeatwardies is in TTITs. Acceptance of Turimus is MANDA2ORI asterisk. Admiral James straightened his uniform and looked at the assembled Global Military Command. "Let's show them what happens when someone tries to bully Earth." The Imperial representatives didn't look as alien as everyone expected. They were humanoid, tall, with pale blue skin and silver eyes. Their elegant uniforms sparkled with metals unknown to Earth. 3 of them stood in the Global Council chamber, looking down at Earth's leaders with barely hidden disgust. The head ambassador spoke in perfect English. "Your world has 30 days to accept imperial rule," he announced. "Your technology is primitive, your societies are chaotic, and your military power is—" He paused, smirking, negligible. Admiral James clenched his fists under the table. Next to him, Commander Anna of Special Operations kept her face carefully blank as she recorded everything on her hidden devices. "And if we refuse?" asked the Brazilian president, her voice firm. The ambassador's smile vanished. "Then we will demonstrate why no world has ever successfully resisted the Empire. Your 30 days begin now." After they left, the chamber exploded into action. "Dr. Thomas," Admiral James called out, "tell them what you found." The scientist stepped forward, his usual nervousness gone. "While they were talking, we scanned them. Their technology is advanced, yes, but it's not magic. And we found something interesting." He pressed a button, showing a hologram of energy readings. "Their ship's shields have a pattern. A pattern means they can be broken." Commander Anna stood up. "My teams are ready. We've been preparing for wars against superior forces for centuries. It's time to use everything we know." The next 20 days transformed Earth. Old missile silos became underground cities. Submarines carried entire governments to secret locations. Factories worked around the clock, guided by plans that merge Earth's best military technology with Dr. Thomas's discoveries. But the Empire wasn't idle. On day 21, they launched a demonstration. A small moon base, home to 300 scientists, vanished in a flash of light. The Empire's message was clear: submit or die. Earth's response came from an unexpected place. Deep under the Rocky Mountains, in a lab that officially didn't exist, Dr. Thomas made a breakthrough. "Look at this," he told Admiral James and Commander Anna, pointing to a screen showing complex equations. "Their shield technology has a major weakness. They never expected anyone to attack it this way." He pressed a button. A small drone rose into the air, surrounded by a shimmering field of energy. "This shield adapts. It learns. Every time they hit it, it gets stronger. We've been studying Earth's magnetic field for centuries. They've barely noticed theirs." Commander Anna's eyes lit up. "How fast can we make these?" "With every factory on Earth. Fast enough." The next week was a blur of activity. Underground factories produced thousands of shield generators. Commander Anna's special forces trained soldiers worldwide in new tactics. Admiral James coordinated with naval forces to protect submarine cities. On day 29, the Empire's ambassador returned. "Have you made your decision?" he asked, standing before the now empty Global Council chamber. Only Admiral James and a few leaders remained in the room. The rest were safely hidden around the world. Admiral James stood up. Despite being shorter than the ambassador, he seemed to tower over him. "Yes, we have." He pressed a button. Worldwide, Sirens began to sound. Not sirens of warning, but of defiance. Earth, he said, his voice broadcasted to every corner of the planet, declares itself off-limits to your empire. The ambassador's face twisted with rage. You had your chance for mercy. Now you'll see the true power of the empire. As he stormed out, Commander Anna's voice came through on a secure channel. All teams in position, sir. Dr. Thomas. Shield network ready. They won't expect this. Admiral James looked out the window at the massive Imperial ships hovering over the city. In bunkers and submarines around the world, humanity waited, armed with weapons born from centuries of warfare and weeks of desperate innovation. Send the signal, he ordered. Let's show them why you don't threaten Earth. Across the planet, millions of tiny drones rose into the air, their adaptive shields glowing like stars in the daylight. The Empire was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or technology. It was the simple fact that humans never, ever, give up. The Empire's first mistake was scanning Earth's surface for military bases. They missed everything underground and underwater. Their second mistake was much bigger. They thought humans were weak. Dr. Thomas stood in his underground lab, staring at test results that could change everything. Admiral, you need to see this, he said into his comm device. It's about their weapons. Within an hour, Admiral James and Commander Anna stood in the lab, looking at strange images on the main screen. Their weapons are designed to kill their own kind, Dr. Thomas explained, pointing to complex diagrams. But human bodies are different. We're not just different on the outside. We're different down to our cells. Commander Anna leaned forward. Different how? Their weapons are made to break down their type of DNA, but human DNA. He showed another image. We're built differently. Their weapons hurt us, yes, but not nearly as much as they should. And there's more. He pressed a button, showing Earth's magnetic field. We've lived with this magnetic field for millions of years. Our bodies adapted to it. Their species evolved without one. When they're here, in our gravity, with our magnetic field. He smiled. They're operating at about 60% strength. Admiral James's eyes widened. They don't know. They never bothered to check. They think we're primitive, remember. Meanwhile, around the world, Commander Robert's guerrilla training programs were showing surprising results. In hidden facilities, soldiers learned to fight in ways the Empire had never seen. They expect armies, Robert told his troops. They expect tanks and planes. They don't expect small teams moving like ghosts. They don't expect fighters who can adapt and think for themselves. In the Indian Ocean, a submarine commander watched Imperial ships through her periscope. They're not looking down, she reported. They have no idea we're here. Similar reports came from resistance cells worldwide. The Empire's army was strong but rigid. They had rules for everything. They never changed their patterns. Humans, on the other hand, had been breaking rules and changing patterns since they first existed. In his command center, Admiral James received a surprising report. Sir, we're detecting communications between their ships and other planets. Show me. The messages were encrypted, but Earth's best hackers had been working for weeks to break their codes. What they found was shocking. They're afraid, Lieutenant Mary reported. Not of our weapons. They're afraid because they can't predict what we'll do next. Their other conquests all followed the same pattern. We're not following any pattern. Commander Anna's voice came through the comm. Sir, my teams are in position worldwide. The Empire's ground forces have no idea we infiltrated every city they occupy. They're looking for armies, not small groups. Dr. Thomas, Admiral James called. Shield network is at full power. We've modified it based on what we learned about their DNA. It'll hit them harder than they expect. Admiral James looked at the global map. Tiny lights showed resistance cells, submarines, underground bases, and hidden weapon platforms. The Empire saw a primitive world with outdated technology. They didn't see the trap they'd walked into. It's time, he said. Commander Robert, Is your team ready? Ready and eager. They won't know what hit them. Commander Anna. Special Forces awaiting your order, sir. Dr. Thomas. All scientific teams standing by. Our surprises are ready. Admiral James took a deep breath. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting, adapting, and surviving. Now those skills would face their greatest test. He pressed the command button. All forces, Operation Hidden Strength is now active. Show them what humans can do. Across Earth, the resistance began, not with massive battles or direct confrontation, but with countless small actions that the Empire's rigid military had no way to counter. In their ships high above Earth, Imperial commanders were about to learn a lesson that humans had known for thousands of years. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest weapons. It's the one you underestimated. The Empire attacked at dawn, just as humans expected them to. Their ships followed perfect formations, their soldiers marched in perfect lines, and their weapons fired in perfect synchronization. It was all perfectly predictable. First wave approaching major cities, Lieutenant Mary reported from the Underground Command Center. Their pattern matches exactly what we saw in training simulations. Admiral James nodded. Dr. Thomas, activate the shields. Across Earth, thousands of small drones rose from their hiding places. The Empire's sensors barely noticed them. They looked too primitive to be a threat. That was their third mistake. The drones formed a web around Earth's cities. When the Empire's energy weapons hit them, something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking, the shields grew stronger. They're confused. Commander Anna reported from her hidden position. Their weapons aren't working like they should. Giving the order now. Small teams of soldiers emerged from sewers, buildings, and underground tunnels. They didn't attack the Empire's forces directly. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, striking from unexpected angles before disappearing again. In the Indian Ocean, submarine commanders watched their screens with satisfaction. The Empire's ships were focusing all their attention upward and forward. They never thought to look behind and below. Torpedo tubes ready, the lead commander reported. They still haven't detected us. Launch, ordered Admiral James. Hundreds of specially modified torpedoes shot through the water. They didn't carry explosives. They carried Dr. Thomas's newest invention, shield disruptors. The torpedoes struck the Empire's ships from below. Their shields, designed to block attacks from the front and sides, flickered and failed. Ground teams, move in, Commander Robert ordered. His guerrilla forces struck at the exact moment the ship's shields fell. They didn't try to destroy the massive vessels. They had a different target. Landing bay secured. A team leader reported minutes later. Their security was focused on stopping armies, not small groups. We're inside. That was all Commander Anna needed to hear. All teams, Phase 2. Begin. Across Earth, the battle changed. The Empire's forces found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't predict. Human soldiers didn't stay in formation. They didn't follow standard combat protocols. Each team adapted its tactics based on the situation. Sir, Lieutenant Mary called out. Enemy communications show increasing confusion. They're requesting new orders from their command, but their command structure is too slow to respond to our speed of attack. In orbit, the Empire's ships tried to regroup. They attempted to raise their shields, but Earth's magnetic field, strengthened by Dr. Thomas's devices, interfered with their systems. Scout ship detected breaking formation, reported a tracking station. They're trying to escape to report back. Admiral James smiled. Not today. Commander Robert. Team in position inside their landing bay. Executing now. Inside the Imperial scout ship, alarms blared as human soldiers appeared where no enemy should have been able to reach. The ship's crew, trained to fight conventional battles, had no defense against commandos who moved like ghosts through their corridors. Scout ship secured, Commander Robert reported 30 minutes later. Their technology is ours now. Dr. Thomas was already heading to the captured ship with his research team. This will help us understand their weaknesses even better. The first wave of the Empire's attack had failed. Their perfect formations were broken. Their predictable tactics had failed against an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. In the command center, Admiral James watched the tactical display as Imperial forces retreated in confusion. Status report. Minimal civilian casualties thanks to the underground shelters, Lieutenant Mary reported. Empire forces retreating to regroup. They've lost 20% of their ground forces and one ship captured intact. And our losses? Less than expected, sir. Our shield network worked better than we hoped. Admiral James nodded, but he knew this was just the beginning. They'll be back, he said. And next time, they'll be angry. But for the first time in Imperial history, a primitive world had not just survived their first attack wave. They had won. Earth had shown its teeth, and they were sharper than anyone expected. The Empire's Grand Marshal arrived with 100 ships. Each one was bigger than the first wave's vessels, and their weapons glowed with deadly purple energy. They're angry now, Lieutenant Mary said, watching the massive fleet appear above Earth. Admiral James stood in the underground command center, his face grim. Good. Angry enemies make mistakes. Dr. Thomas, what have you learned from their scout ship? The scientist looked up from his computer, his eyes bright with excitement despite not sleeping for 2 days. Everything. Their technology is advanced, but they haven't improved it in centuries. They found something that worked and just kept using it. And the ship itself. We've already copied their engine design. Commander Roberts' teams are installing them in our fighters now. But there's something else. He pulled up a diagram on the main screen. Their whole empire depends on these supply lines. They're stretched thin, trying to control too much space. Before they could discuss further, the Grand Marshal's message boomed through all communication channels. Primitive rebels of Earth, your defiance ends now. Surrender or watch your world burn. The massive fleet moved into attack position. Their formation was different this time. They had learned from their first defeat. But so had Earth. All units, Admiral James commanded, Operation Shattered Stars is now active. Around the world, humanity's forces moved according to their new plan. Underground bases launched swarms of fighters, now powered by Imperial engines. Submarines surfaced in unexpected places, firing specially designed missiles. The Empire's fleet was ready for these attacks. Their improved shields held against Earth's weapons. Their new formations covered each other's weak spots. Then Dr. Thomas activated his latest invention. Magnetic pulse generators at full power, he reported, focusing Earth's magnetic field. Now, the Empire's ships suddenly found themselves fighting not just Earth's military, but Earth itself. The planet's magnetic field, strengthened and directed by thousands of hidden generators, played havoc with their systems. Their shields are weakening, Commander Anna reported from her stealth ship, moving strike teams into position. The battle that followed was unlike anything in Imperial history. Human forces didn't try to match the Empire's power. Instead, they struck at weak points, disappeared, then struck again from different directions. But the Empire's superior numbers began to tell. Cities around the world reported damage from orbital strikes. The underground shelters held, but everyone could feel the impacts. We're losing ground in Asia and South America, Lieutenant Mary reported. Our shields can't take much more. Admiral James watched the tactical display, his mind racing. Then he saw it, a pattern in the Empire's attacks. Commander Robert, he called, take your best team. I've found their command ship. The Grand Marshal's vessel was massive, covered in golden armor and protected by dozens of support ships. But they all guarded the obvious approaches. No one watched the debris field of destroyed ships floating nearby. Commander Roberts' team, wearing stolen Imperial spacesuits, drifted among the wreckage. They looked like just more broken pieces of metal until they reached the command ship's hull. In position, Robert whispered. "Their arrogance is their weakness. They never expected anyone to try something this primitive." "Do it," ordered Admiral James. Small charges, designed by Dr. Thomas, cut through the hull. The Empire's internal sensors, designed to detect energy weapons and large explosions, missed them completely. Commander Robert's team entered the ship through the hole, carrying a special package. "Package delivered," he reported 5 minutes later. "Recommend immediate withdrawal of all forces." Admiral James gave the order. Earth's military pulled back, submarines dived deep, and underground bases sealed their doors. The Grand Marshal laughed, his voice booming across all channels. "You see, you run like cowards before our might." Then Dr. Thomas's device activated inside his ship. The Empire's mighty command vessel didn't explode. Instead, all its systems simply stopped. Its engines died. Its weapons fell silent. Even its artificial gravity failed. As the massive ship began to drift, panic spread through the Imperial fleet. Without their rigid command structure, they didn't know what to do. "Send the message," Admiral James ordered. Every screen on every Imperial ship displayed the same words. This was a warning. "Leave Earth, or next time we won't be so gentle." 3 months after the defeat of the Grand Marshal's fleet, Earth was ready to strike back. Dr. Thomas stood before the Global Council, now restored to its original chamber. "The captured Imperial ships have told us everything," he said, pointing to a map of nearby star systems. "Their empire isn't as strong as they pretend. Many worlds they control are ready to rebel. They just needed proof it was possible." Admiral James stepped forward. "Operation Freedom is ready. Our ships, built with modified Imperial technology, can reach their closest colonies in days. Commander Anna's special forces have already made contact with resistance groups on 12 worlds." The council chamber buzzed with excitement. For the first time in history, humans were about to leave their solar system, not as explorers, but as liberators. "Launch the operation," the council president ordered. Earth's first interstellar fleet departed that night. Unlike the Empire's massive ships, Earth's vessels were smaller, faster, and harder to detect. Commander Robert led the first wave, using tactics perfected in Earth's oceans. Imperial patrol detected. His sensor officer reported as they approached the first colony world. "They're not looking for ships our size. They expect big fleet actions. Just like submariners hunting aircraft carriers," Robert smiled. "Begin the approach." The Earth fleet slipped past Imperial defenses using the same guerrilla tactics that had worked at home. But this time, they had a surprise for the Empire. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Lieutenant Mary announced from her communication station, "Sending the proof of Earth's victories now." On the colony world below, millions of screens lit up with images of Earth's defense. They saw Imperial ships defeated not by superior force, but by human ingenuity and determination. The response was immediate. Multiple uprisings reported. Commander Anna's voice came through the comm. "The colony's workers are seizing control of their cities. Imperial forces are overwhelmed. They don't know which direction to face." Similar reports came in from other worlds. The Empire had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. Against a single opponent, this worked perfectly. But now they faced attacks from outside and inside at the same time. Imperial ships approaching from their core worlds, warned Lieutenant Mary. "Right on schedule." Admiral James replied from his command ship. "Dr. Thomas." "Ready, sir. The improved magnetic disruptors are in position." When the Imperial fleet arrived to crush the rebellion, they found themselves facing not just Earth's ships, but weapons they had never imagined. Dr. Thomas had taken the idea of Earth's magnetic field and turned it into a weapon. Space itself seemed to turn against the Imperial ships. Their perfect formations broke apart as invisible forces pulled them in different directions. "Their supply lines are cut," Commander Robert reported. 3 more colonies have declared independence in the last hour. In the Empire's capital, panic spread through the royal court. Their invincible military was being defeated not by superior weapons, but by tactics they couldn't understand or predict. Admiral James watched the tactical display as more and more worlds joined Earth's alliance. "Send the final message," he ordered. Throughout Imperial space, every communication channel carried his words. "To all worlds under Imperial control, Earth stands with you. The time of the Empire is over. Join us, and together we'll build something better." The response shocked even the most optimistic humans. Worlds that had suffered under Imperial rule for centuries rose up. Imperial governors found themselves facing not just Earth's military, but their own people. "Sir," Lieutenant Mary reported, joy in her voice, "the Imperial Senate is calling for an emergency session. They're talking about major reforms." Commander Anna's teams reported from dozens of worlds. "The people here don't want another empire. They want what Earth has, the freedom to choose their own path." In just 3 months, humanity had gone from defending their own world to reshaping the galaxy. "It's not over," Admiral James warned the Council. "The Empire won't give up easily, but we've shown everyone something important." "What's that?" asked the Council President. "That the future belongs to those who dare to be free." 1 year after Earth first declared itself off-limits to the Empire, the galaxy had changed forever. Admiral James stood on the observation deck of Earth's first space station, looking at the ships gathered around it. Vessels of all sizes and designs represented 50 different worlds, former Imperial colonies that now called themselves the Free Systems Alliance. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Dr. Thomas joined him at the window. The scientist looked different now, more confident, but just as excited about new discoveries. "The Empire's representatives are ready for the meeting." In the station's main conference room, Imperial officials sat on one side of a large table. They no longer wore their sparkly uniforms or looked down at others with disgust. Defeat had taught them humility. "The Empire accepts the independence of the Free Systems Alliance," their lead negotiator announced, his voice heavy. "We also agree to the technology exchange program and the new trade routes." Commander Anna, now serving as Earth's chief diplomat, nodded. "And the reform of your government. Our Senate now holds real power. The Imperial family remains, but only as ceremonial leaders." He paused, then added something that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "We have much to learn from Earth's example." After the meeting, Admiral James met with Commander Robert and Lieutenant Mary in his office. The tactical displays that once showed battles now showed trade routes and diplomatic missions. "Hard to believe it's been only a year," Robert said, looking at a map of known space. The former Imperial territories were now marked in different colors: independent worlds, trade federations, and the smaller reformed empire. "The best kind of victory," Lieutenant Mary added, "one that makes everyone stronger." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from Dr. Thomas. "You all need to come to the lab right now," he said, his voice filled with his old excitement. "The scientists from the Centauric colonies have shown me something amazing." In his lab, Dr. Thomas stood with a group of alien scientists. They had once worked for the Empire, developing weapons. Now they worked with Earth, developing new technologies to help people. "We've combined your understanding of magnetic fields with our quantum technology," one alien scientist explained. "Look at this." They activated a device on the table. A small ball of light appeared, then stretched into a line, then formed a circle. "A stable wormhole," Dr. Thomas announced proudly. "Small now, but soon we'll be able to connect any 2 points in space. Distance will no longer matter." Admiral James smiled, remembering how just a year ago, Earth had seemed alone and vulnerable. Now they stood at the forefront of a new age of exploration and discovery. Commander Anna's voice came through the comm. "Sir, the first group of human colonists is ready to depart for the Proxima system. They've asked if you'd say a few words." In the station's launch bay, hundreds of excited humans prepared to become the first Earth colonists. Not conquerors like the Empire, but explorers and settlers ready to work alongside their new alien neighbors. Admiral James looked at the crowd, families, scientists, engineers, all carrying humanity's spirit of adventure and determination to the stars. "A year ago," he began, "we stood alone against an empire that thought us primitive and weak. They didn't understand that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our weapons or technology. It's in our spirit, our ability to adapt, to think differently, to work together, and to never give up." He gestured to the stars visible through the launch bay windows. "Now we go to the stars not as conquerors, not as an empire, but as equals and friends. We carry with us the lessons we've learned, that true strength comes from unity and diversity, that the best victories are those that lift everyone up, and that the future belongs to those who dare to dream and work to make those dreams real." The crowd cheered as the first colony ships prepared to launch. On planets across the galaxy, others watched the broadcast. The Empire had united the galaxy through force. Earth and its allies had united it through freedom and hope. As the ships departed, carrying humanity's first colonists to their new homes among the stars, Admiral James smiled. Earth had declared itself off-limits to the Empire, and in doing so, had opened the galaxy to everyone.